Hello again. In this video we're going to talk about the 4 tissue types found in animals. So we will start with epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue is often arranged in sheets of densely packed cells. Epithelial tissue is found both inside and outside as the layers that cover your body or line the inner walls. In general, epithelial tissue is specialized to protect and secrete. It may also absorb materials. All epithelial tissue is asymmetrical or polarized. We'll talk more about that one in just a moment. And epithelial tissue is often a selective barrier, allowing certain things in, certain things out, or preventing things from coming in general. There are 3 general shapes of epithelial tissue. Squamosal cells, seen here in the top, are sort of flattened cells, almost like tiles put together. So in this microscope diagram, you can see those epithelial tissue creating this lining that is thin. Some epithelial tissue have simple cuboidal cells, which are almost square or cube shape with that nucleus in the center. The third shape is columnar. So these are long, tall cells with the nucleus generally on one side. Okay, and in this picture we see that they are also ciliated. So there are these microvilli or cilia on the top layer. I mentioned that epithelial cells are polar. Generally, epithelial cells are attached at a basement membrane, so they have this layer at the bottom where they all connect. The other side faces either the outside world, such as your epithelial tissue or your skin, or it can face a lumen, which is a fancy word for the inside of a tube. So for example, your digestive system has a lumen inside your intestines. That inner whole section, that space is the lumen. So that face that is towards the lumen is the apical surface of your epithelial tissue. The bottom part attached to the basement membrane is called the basal side. Epithelial tissue comes in many shapes and forms. We've talked about the 3 shapes: squamosal, cuboidal, and columnar. It can also be simple, where there is a single layer of cells, or stratified, where there are many cells stacked on top of each other. Different parts of your body have different types of epithelial cells, and that all depends on the function of those cells. We're not going to go into those functions and where you find those types of cells in this class, but there are a few examples on this diagram. The second type of tissue we're going to discuss is connective tissue. We're going to look at 6 examples or 6 types of connective tissue, but before we do that, we're going to talk about what's in common. So connective tissue, as its name implies, connects different tissues to each other. It can anchor and support tissue. The 6 types we will discuss are blood, loose connective tissue, dense connective tissue, adipose, bone, and cartilage. All of these connective tissues have an extracellular matrix that is non-living. This surrounds the living cells, often providing scaffolding or attachment for those cells. It can protect or cushion the cells, and it can add mechanical strength or transmit information. Here's another look at the non-living matrix of connective tissue. In this example, there are fibroblasts. These are cells that are secreting proteins like collagen and elastin, and that is creating this connective tissue. Again, note the matrix is outside of the cell, it's extracellular, and it's non-living. Can be made of proteins, like in this example. It can be made of water, like we'll see in blood, and it can be mineralized so that it is very strong and sturdy, like we'll see in bone. The first example of connective tissue that we'll talk about is the loose connective tissue. This is the most common type of connective tissue, and it exists under your skin and between your organs, often anchoring different tissues together. The extracellular matrix is often protein-based, made of compounds such as elastin and collagen, and those fibers are loosely organized throughout the tissue, almost looking like a spider web rather than being tightly packed together. Dense connective tissue also has a protein-based fibrous extracellular matrix. However, now we see that those fibers are densely packed in lines. So in this example here, on the screen you see that the collagen fibers are tightly packed all together, with those darker dots, the fibroblast cells, tucked in between. 3 examples of dense connective tissue include tendons, ligaments, and the intervertebral discs in your back. Our third example of connective tissue is adipose tissue. This is the tissue where fat globules are stored in human bodies. The extracellular matrix is again fibrous, and it's very thinly spaced. Often on a microscope, it's hard to find those fibers. Instead, we see these big open sections where the fat globules are stored. So we see that here. These pockets are where the fat globules are stored. And then there are the nuclei of the cells tucked in between. Many animals, including mammals, have a layer of adipose tissue just below their skin. This can help with insulation. Some mammals take this to an extreme. If you think about blubber found in seals and whales, that adipose tissue below the skin helps insulate them in their aquatic environment. We also see adipose tissue between muscles, a little around the heart, and in your joints to help cushion. The next type of connective tissue we'll talk about is cartilage. Cartilage consists of cells in a matrix of collagen, and it provides flexible support. Cartilage is found in places like the tip of your nose, your ears. You have cartilage in your joints and at the bone ends, and as rings in your respiratory tract. You can see from this microscope image that the extracellular matrix has been stained purple. So we have these packed collagen fibers, and in between there are these little pockets called lacuna that have a cell inside. So that cell is called a chondrocyte. The prefix chondr refers to cartilage. Similar to cartilage is bone. Bone consists of cells in a matrix of collagen that is highly mineralized and provides firm support and attachment for our muscle fibers. This makes up our skeleton system. Bone is organized into osteons, these circular units where bone cells, called osteocytes, are located in between hard mineralized extracellular matrix. In the center of an osteon, we see a hole where blood vessels can come through. This hole allows for nutrients to enter and for waste to be removed from the bone cells. Osteocytes are also located in lacuna, tiny pockets in between the extracellular matrix that provide a home for these cells. The final type of connective tissue we'll discuss is blood. Blood is a mixture of cells and fluids. The extracellular matrix of blood is the plasma, which consists primarily of water. Blood has a huge number of functions. Some of the primary functions include transport and delivery, temperature regulation, immunoprotection, and clotting. I mentioned that blood is made of plasma and cells. Plasma is a liquid component. It's 90% water, and it has salts, nutrients, wastes, protein, and some carbon dioxide dissolved in it. If we look at the overall composition of blood, roughly 55% of blood is the plasma. The other 45% is cells. There are 3 types of cells in the blood that you need to know about for this class. Erythrocytes are the red blood cells. Their primary function is transporting oxygen. Leukocytes are the white blood cells. They're used in defense of the body. And thrombocytes are parts of a white blood cell that are used for clotting. The third type of tissue we'll discuss is muscle tissue. Muscle tissue consists of cells that contract when electrically stimulated. The purpose of this is to generate force, cause movement, and to pump fluids throughout the body. There are 3 kinds of muscle tissue that we see in our bodies: skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, and smooth muscle. Skeletal muscle is found attached to your skeletal system and helps with movement of the entire body. Cardiac muscle is in the heart and is used to pump fluids throughout the body. Smooth muscle is often sandwiched between other layers of tissue and is found in organs that are often rounded, such as your arteries, your uterus, your bladder, and your small intestines. Smooth muscle is often found and used in areas where a diameter needs to change. So the tube or lumen may get larger and smaller with the contraction of those cells. Muscle cells consist of filaments of protein like actin and myosin. The actin and myosin will slide back and forth, causing the muscle contractions. Actin and myosin are organized into units called sarcomeres, with a thick fiber in the center and these thin actin fibers along the sides. The actin will walk along the myosin, causing the overall sarcomere to shorten, and when the muscle relaxes, they walk back, and that sarcomere will lengthen. Some of our muscles are striated, which means that we can see these sarcomeres lined up in the muscle fibers. This is true of both skeletal muscle and cardiac muscle. Striations can actually be seen on a microscope as these little crossbars or lines within the muscle fibers. Skeletal muscle, again, is striated, attached to our muscles, and it generates force that allows us to move. This is usually under conscious control, so that we have to think about causing those motions to happen. There are exceptions to this rule, including certain areas of our body where skeletal muscle acts involuntarily, as well as our reflexes. Cardiac muscle is found in the heart. It is also striated. It has branched fibers that help with communication, and it is under unconscious control. Smooth muscle creates slow rhythmic contractions that help food move or help push fluids through our body. It's under unconscious control, so we don't have to think about moving food through our digestive tract. We don't have to think about contracting our arteries. These smooth muscle is structured a little differently than skeletal or cardiac muscle. Instead of being arranged in fibers, smooth muscle has spindle-like cells that are arranged in sheets. The final type of tissue we'll talk about is nervous tissue. Nervous tissue initiates and conducts electrical signals that transfer information around your body. This is used to process, store, and transmit information all throughout. We see nervous tissue in our brain, spinal cord, and the nerves throughout our body. There are 2 types of cells you need to know for the nervous system. The first is our neurons. These are the larger of the 2 cells and have a very unique structure. Neurons, like any other cell, have a globular cell body with a nucleus found in the center. Branching off from that cell body, we see dendrites, which are often shorter branches that receive information. Many neurons also have 1 or 2 long axons. These long branches transmit information to the next destination. Axons are wrapped in a myelin sheath. This sheath helps to protect the cells as well as to insulate the signal and send it faster through the axon. The other type of cell is the neuroglia. These small glial cells are seen throughout the nervous tissue. These are support cells that help nourish and take care of the larger neurons. They also produce the myelin sheath. Neurons are often bundled into nerves. These nerves go in a similar direction and carry information from one place to another. An example of this is your optic nerve, which goes from your eye to your brain, carrying information about the objects that you see around you. That's all for this video. Thanks, and see you next time.